We live in a time that is filled with unrest, and there are problems all around the world, and one country against another country, and within the country, factions that are fighting, and there's terrorism, and there's economic upheaval, and you can just choose to get involved in these horrible scenes. What's your counsel for people who are listening and how to handle it?
I think, Heidi, I would say just to stay steady and to depend on the Lord, live right. The promises that the Lord makes are to His people individually in their lives. And there's a passage in the Book of Mormon during those war years that are featured so prominently in the Book of Alma that I think is significant. Mormon almost parenthetically says, in the midst of this terrible war, that there never was a happier time among the people of Nephi. How could that be? Their world was in turmoil. Their very society was at risk. And yet, those who were faithful to the principles of the gospel, to covenants made, were happy. And I think that is the most important thing. I think we as Latter-day Saints, especially all people, need to avoid being strident. Yeah. We need to avoid extremes in our views, political or otherwise, but just to hold fast to gospel principles and know that the Lord will be with us and He'll help us through.
Yeah.
You know, I read a quote. In fact, I wrote it down because I sometimes misquote and introduce words that aren't there. And it's just a very short little thing, but it says, sometimes God quiets the storm, but sometimes He lets the storm rage and quiets the child. Mm. And I think that's what we need to do, is the Lord quiets the child, and if we allow Him, He can.
How do you, as a wife and a mother, keep that steadiness He's talking about and quiet the child? What do you do to keep that peace?
I try to quiet myself. I feel like I am the child. We talk about things as they come up, but I think, and Lance and I have not always, we've always disagreed, but we haven't always been in the same political party, and we openly just talk about these things, but we also try to emphasize the Lord in all that we do, the prophet, who, in the midst of all of this, still finds great joy and great happiness and teaches that to us. And so we just try and emulate, we try and teach these things and try to remind our children of the things. I mean, we've had kind of a different experience in our life with Vietnam and with our Courtney and our Adam, and the children have seen all of this, and I think have gained an understanding a little bit of what the world is. And growing up in California, not a world that was always easy to live as members of the church. But so we just try, as raising our children, we try to do the same thing about keeping a sweet spirit in the home, to let Christ abide in us.